Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us for a couple of seconds and we'll tell you how you'll be able to keep Forrest Fenn's treasure when you find it. And we're back. Oh, look at that.
Back.
Lower third.
Okay, well, let's get busy with housekeeping. Housekeeping. We have moderators Joel Lewicki, Man in the Barn, are both here, so we can trust that you'll continue in your work with moderation. Presentation today will be followed by an open Q&A, so you'll be able to ask any questions you like after the presentation. And we have Super Chat available down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the grayed out $sign. You can click on that if you'd like to have your question or comment pop to the top in a colored box. And that's something that, you know, people enjoy doing. Sometimes just to give us money, and sometimes they just want extra attention. So.
And we appreciate that very much. And we advise that if you're actually going to make a contribution to Super Chat, ask a question. We'll be happy to answer it for you. And again, today is open questions, and we'll get those. We'll get started with those questions at the end of today's presentation. I feel like we have a long presentation, so I want to get to that as soon as possible.
And today I have special thanks go out to these gentlemen. And I'm going to read their name in just a moment. But what I'm thanking them for is sending money to our PayPal account in order that I could benefit from that, along with Toby's matching funds to purchase the course for a life coach certification, which I did, and we reached our number, including the textbook that goes with it.
Yes, you were able to get the textbook as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I worked on downloading all the materials and printing them out, and I put together a notebook, and it's going to take a minimum of 3 months to get through the curriculum, but I'm very excited to get started with that. And I want to thank Michael Howell, Joel Lewicki, Craig Carter, John Gould, Daniel Judy, Stephen Rempel, Chris Statori, and Joey Perro. And Joey Perro also purchased the wine bottle that we drank from last week, the Muerto imagery, sangria.
Yeah, that my daughter did. We'll have another one of those on Thursday for everyone.
So look forward to that again. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for contributing to my education. I appreciate it.
That was well done. I was happy to see that, and that you were able not only to get the course, but to get the book. So let's go on and have a conversation about finders, keepers, losers, weepers. This is a topic of some discussion. It's a regular discussion. And that covers the territory of what ownership rights the finder of Fenn's treasure might have. And we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to give you some indications of what we think. I'm sorry, were you going to say something? Mm-hmm. But before we do that, I want Shelley to tell you about the caveats for this show.
All right. Well, Shelley and Toby are not lawyers. We are not even paralegals. We don't play attorneys on television, and we didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, as my husband likes to say when he's giving out disclaimers. So take all of our advice with a grain of salt, unless you see it as a citation and go to that citation and it's written by an actual lawyer. Just everything else is our opinion. So don't accept anything we say as fact. Do your own research, unless it's something we've pointed to you to. Go ahead and research there, but do your own research on everything. Just, you know, as always, you should always do that.
And at the end of the show today, after Q&A, I'm going to tell you how we're going to help you with some of that research. Okay? So let's get on with it.
All right. Cindy says our volume's a little low.
A little low.
If anybody else has any issues with audio or visual, please let us know.
Yeah. Again, we're experimenting, and I'm bouncing right off the red. That's as low as as high as I'm going to be able to get it without actually starting to boom out and clipping. So
yes.
So here's what we're going to cover today. The first thing that we're going to cover is it's important to see what Fenn has told us in the poem, because there is actually some legal jargon in the poem that's designed to help protect the finder of the treasure. Then we're going to give you an indication of what we found in our research. Now, all of this research out there is substantiated, and it has a basis on citation. We did our best not to interpret the research, but present it to you as it was documented. And again, at the end of today's presentation, or at the end of today's program, I'll give you some help in the matter of research. Then we're going to talk about some of the things that Fenn has said in these matters. And I think he's been very consistent in what he said. He uses a lot of the same terminology repetitively. And I think that's very important because it sounds like he's done his homework. And we're going to see that in the program. And then we're going to tell you what we plan to do. This is where we get into, you do your own research, make up your own mind, but we have a plan for what we're going to do to ensure that we protect ourselves, both from a security perspective and a financial perspective. When we find the treasure, you know that we already have a video out there called What We'll Do When We Find the Treasure, and I'm just going to repeat a couple of things from in there. But if I were to make recommendations to someone, if I was an attorney and I was to make recommendations to someone, I would almost make these recommendations. So let's go out to the 9 sentences in Fenn's poem. And I know it's going to be difficult for you to read this. That was not my intent, but
everybody has the poem memorized anyway.
Right, exactly. So what I've done here is something that you'll find on Gypsy's Kiss, our blog, gypsyskiss.com. And if you click on the tab called the poem, it shows the poem as it was written with our perception of the 9 clues, and then I broke the poem into the 9 physical sentences that are in there. And I would say that the clues start in sentence number 2 and go about halfway down through sentence number 5. Sentence number 1 and 6, 7, and 9 are important sentences in terms of their legal content. So I've eliminated these, and we're going to talk mostly about these, but I've gone on to highlight the areas that I think are important. So the first sentence reads, "As I have gone alone in there with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where?" And to us, that is an indication of several things. Number 1, it's my treasure. I am of sound mind. I know exactly what I'm doing with this treasure. I'm going to place it someplace. I'm going to put it someplace where it can be found if it's looked for.
And he wasn't coerced.
And right. And he's not being coerced into any of this. He's not being forced to do this, anyone. And he's gone alone in there. So all these decisions were made by the individual that wrote this poem, and we know that that poem is documented in Forrest Fenn's book. So if I was an attorney, I could make a good argument that this treasure once belonged to Forrest Fenn, irrespective of the fact that he's put his hair in it so that DNA analysis could be performed, and that I wouldn't be surprised if there is a public document that shows his DNA so that a comparison could be made. But that's a piece of legalese that's important because it has a lot of things to it. I own it. I know what I'm doing. I'm doing it intentionally, and I did this all on my own without anybody's help. So then we go through the clues, and he gets down to the latter half of sentence number 5, and he gives you some advice. Tarry scant with marvel gaze. Don't hang around staring at the treasure. Take the chest and go in peace. And I think the important thing is that take the chest and go. Don't stand there. Party later. Shelley's happy dance, and then get out of there. And then number 6, sentence number 6, is really important in terms of literally one word in that sentence. He says, "So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek?" Trove is a word that is used in common law. That common law has been adopted by the federal government and most state governments to have a very exact meaning. And we're going to talk about the exact meaning, but that's intentional for him to call it a trove. It wasn't that he needed to rhyme it with anything. He needed to identify what was up there, this treasure's bold of his, and how it would be defined by the law. The answer I already know. I've done it entire week. So hear me all and listen good. And that's a phrase that's used in courts to announce that you should be paying attention from this point forward. Oyez, oyez, oyez. This is the court of Bernalillo County, etc., etc. That's the equivalent. So hear me all and listen good. It goes back in common law because it indicates the start of a legal proceeding. And then if you are brave and in the wood, and here's another important line, I give you title to the gold. Title is an expression of, it is an expression and or a document of ownership. And what he's basically doing is transferring the ownership of this trove over to the finder, the person who had been brave and in the wood, and the finder of that treasure. So those are the important legal sentences in the poem. So he's already told us that. Now, let's go over to what I'm bouncing off my line here. I can see.
So you're loud and clear.
Yeah, loud and clear, but not peaky.
That's what I hear.
Okay. So the common law definition of treasure trove. Now, common law goes back to pretty much English law of the 1600s, and it was adopted. It was adopted by England in terms of their laws, and then as the folks from Europe came over here, especially the English, we started adopting their common law, and that's why it's called common law. It's usually unarguable. That common law, in terms of what a treasure trove is, has been adopted by the federal government and most of the state governments. And I say most only because I haven't researched them all. I can tell you that for the 4 states that are considered the treasure states, they've adopted this definition of common law that the federal government has adopted. Treasure trove, to be a treasure trove, it must be of gold, silver. Paper money is also deemed to be treasure since it's previously represented gold or silver. By the same reasoning, it could be argued that coins and tokens and metals other than gold and silver are also included. So, based on what we know about the treasure, we can assume that by this definition, it is a treasure trove. Now, here's the sticky wicket. The object must be concealed long enough so that it is unlikely that the true owner will reappear to claim it. Now, we have often heard that Forrest has said that he hopes this treasure is found in 100 years. That's an interesting number because I think you can play that either side of that. But the consensus, as in the practice of law and as some of these decisions has made, the consensus in both federal and state courts is that the object must be at least a few decades old. So the question then becomes, what if it is found before that? And I think that's why the phraseology, I transfer the title, I give you title to the gold, is in the poem because it could hit a sticky wicket in a court where the court could say, well, Forrest Fenn is still alive, for example, or Forrest Fenn hasn't been dead for long enough for this to be considered a trove, and that it might be his blood relatives that might make an argument in their favor. So the reason that line, I give you title to the gold, becomes so important is because this part of the definition of treasure trove. Now, you can find a lot of stuff online, but I'm going to highly recommend that you read the paper that was written by an attorney whose name is John M. Kleberg. He's a practicing attorney in New York, the state of New York. He has a curriculum vitae that's about 5 pages long, including all the presentations on matters similar to this. He's a expert that goes to court on behalf of numismatic finds, coin finds in both shipwrecks in the water and on land. And he literally is considered, if not the top expert, one of the top experts. on this matter. He's written at least 3 scholarly papers on these matters. Number 2 deals with shipwrecks. Number 3 deals with a trade in cultural property. But the one I'm going to recommend that you really spend some time with is the Treasure Trove Law, his first one, Treasure Trove Law in the United States on land-based objects. That is, things that have been hidden on the land. It deals with federal law, and it deals with fines on various levels of property. And he's going to tell you all the things that you need to know about finding the trove, the treasure trove that Fenn hid. So John M. Kleberg, 3 scholarly papers, Treasure Trove Law in the United States. Okay, it's a, I don't know, 13, 14, 15-page paper. And it has, like all legal scholarly papers, it has a lot of citations. So you could spend your life not only reading this paper, but pursuing the citations that he refers to in the law. So lost property, the reason this is not considered lost property and why Fenn has never brought it up as lost property and why you shouldn't bring it up as lost property is because lost property has a completely different definition. And what will happen with lost property is there's going to be a requirement to report the loss or to report the fine to the police. At that point, you have to transfer title over to a legal authority, probably the police, maybe the jurisdiction. It could be, you know, the government offices that represent that jurisdiction. They have to spend a reasonable amount of time seeking out the owner and confirming that it was lost, and the owner at that point could ask back for that. When any of the offer is found, you have to, after a reasonable period, they have to return that property to the owner, transferring title from themselves back to the owner. Now, if after a reasonable period the owner is not found, then they can transfer title to you. So I would never, and I don't think Fenn would ever, refer to his trove as lost property because it creates a whole set of new requirements for the finder. Found on private property, basic, and what you're going to see in this paper that I referred to, finders who are trespassers on property not owned by them, private property and tribal land likely, generally lose all their rights to the find to the owner of the property. So that's when you've heard me more than once say when somebody makes the argument that they have to get onto some tribal land in order to find this treasure. The problems, I'm going to tell you 2 tribal land stories, my experience with them. Several years ago, I was on my way to go trout fishing in the Jemez, on the Jemez River. And in between where I was going and where I was going from is Jemez Pueblo. And right about halfway through Jemez Pueblo on the right-hand side of the road as you're heading north is a little food stop. They have a set of food stands that serve Native American foods, and they make those little pastelitos that are so good. And if you want a Native American taco, they'll do that for you. Anyway, I stopped. And I've told you before that my daughter is an artist, and one of the areas that she's a master in is Spanish colonial retablos. And they have to use traditional methods and tools and techniques in order to paint these retablos. So she collects dirt at different locations. She has a color red that's actually made from these little tiny red bugs that come from Mexico. But for those of you who have been through Jemez, you know that it's an area that has that red mountain dirt. When it rains, it literally looks like blood running on the streets. And so I thought to myself, I had an empty water bottle, and I thought to myself, let me take a little bit of this dirt back to my daughter. And I was about halfway through filling that bottle, and a tribal police officer came up to me. And he said, I'm going to give you a chance to pour that out before I arrest you from taking tribal property. And I was about to make the argument that this is dirt. And I decided way against that because I'm sure he would have arrested me. That's how seriously they take it. And the fines are the fines are saying whether you take dirt or whether you walk off that property with things that are culturally important to their tribe. Second one, I will tell you, is a couple of years ago, Sally and I were doing a documentary, and I needed some footage, some drone footage, and I wanted to get it along the Rio Grande. and I wanted to get it during the fall season where all the colors had come out. So I stopped just north of Isleta Pueblo on a road there, and I pulled out my drone, started flying, and within 10 minutes a tribal police officer had come up, and he had his gun, his pistol, .357 Magnum 4-inch barrel pistol, in his hand, and he raised it up towards my drone, not that he would have hit it, and at that point it might have been a federal crime for him to do that, and he said, "Bring it down or I'll shoot it down." And I have no doubts that he was. By the time I had gotten it down, there were 3 or 4 other police officers there. They took my license to check out my background. I was clean. There was a young officer that apologized and explained that how they felt about these things. And they made me, on the spot, erase the photographs, or the video rather, that I had taken before they were going to let me leave. Now, I got away, thankfully, without having to go to jail, but they take this tribal property ownership very seriously. Don't mess with them. So then the definition comes about federal land. That is the Federal Park Service, Federal Forest Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Land Management, et cetera, et cetera. So federal land, all federal land that is managed and or administered by the federal government is covered by the ARPA, Archaeological Resource Protection Act. Isn't there another acronym, ARPA?
The
AARP. Okay. AARP. Under ARPA, 1979, under ARPA, archaeological resources more than 100 years old on public lands belongs to the government. And they do that, protect it. And that's where I think that 100-year thing comes out. There's another caveat. Based on legal precedents that's been happening now for almost 50 years, the term archaeological resources means any material remains of past human life or activities which are of archaeological interest as determined by federal regulations. The likelihood of you being able to take material of cultural importance off federal land, you would have to be a licensed, a certified and licensed archaeologist to excavate that property and pull out whatever you were looking for. And you would have to share the results of your research with the federal government. But then again, there are more sticky wickets. Sticky wickets include that because of case law, it goes beyond cultural finds to even treasure troves of gold and silver coins or script under penalty of total forfeiture. So there is case law to indicate that even if it's not of cultural value, if it's over 100 years old and it's not of cultural value, that it's just a bunch of coins and gold, etc., the government has already made a case for forfeiture, even if that's true. But wait, there's more. Because of the federal policy against spoliation, which is digging things up in on federal lands or Indian lands, even coins and script less than one, that goes back to that definition, coins, gold, etc., less than 100 years old means it is unlikely that a finder of the gold or silver coinage on federal lands will prevail. What that basically means, and what you'll find in this scholarly research, is that cases have already been made for people who have found objects on federal lands that were not culturally relevant, that the government, that were less than 100 years old, archaeologically not relevant, and the government made a case against them and was able to prevail. So the question one has to ask at that point, why would Fenn hide it on a federal land? And that's a really good question, because I'm not sure that it was on federal land. So let's go on to one more thing that I think is important here. This is a map that you're probably not going to be able to see very well, that has the land managed by the five agencies of the federal government in the western states, including New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. The gray represents Bureau of Land Management. The blue is DOD. You can see our White Sands Missile Range down here. The light green is the Forest Service. The orange yellow is the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the red is the National Park Service. So you can see a lot of that land right up into this area this area here and this area here is Forest Service. There's BLM land right around here, here in the lower Wyoming, which happens to match, honestly, that Western Interior Seaway area. And then a little bit up in Montana, but a lot of that land up there. And then, of course, the white land is private property, private or tribal property. So this map is in another scholarly document that was written in March of 2017 on behalf of the Congressional Research Service, and it's called Federal Land Overview, Ownership and Data. And this is an important document to have at your disposal because it pretty much takes and defines exactly what federal land is and what agencies manage that federal land and what responsibilities those agencies have to management, and defines them. Interestingly enough, this was a paper that was done on behalf of the congressional committees that were dealing with immigration. So I'm not how it all came together. It like that other paper that I described is a not difficult read. It's you really have to be into it. But it's important for you if you're going to find this treasure. So let's take a look at what Fenn has said, documents citations for what Fenn has. That's a pretty necklace. Is that your Valentine's Day present?
It is.
Very nice. It's a little ruby heart, huh?
Yes.
Show everybody.
See?
It's very distracting. So let's first talk about Fenn's perception of the meaning of the word title. And this really came out, interestingly, a couple of weeks ago. We posted a video of Laureen Mills' interview, April 2011 interview of Forrest Fenn on her program Report for Santa Fe. And she covers a lot of territory, and that's one of the areas where Fenn talks about 9 clues in consecutive order. But one of the things that struck me was a part of the conversation that she brought up, and it related to this man. And as you can see, that's her background. That's Craig Childs. Craig Childs, I think, is a registered archaeologist. If not, he writes a lot about subjects that are archaeological. I haven't read any of his books, unfortunately. He wrote a book called Finders Keepers, where he talked about archaeological plunder. I don't know necessarily that Fenn was mentioned in that book, but I do know that they don't particularly care for each other. And she brought him up in the context of his name. She brought Craig Childs' name up. He mentioned the book, and then she said, as Craig said, who owns the past? And Fenn, in body language and facial expression, reacted very negatively to that question. You can tell he didn't like it, but he was looking forward to answer it. And he stopped her and he said, that's an interesting question. You want me to answer that? And you can hear, the camera's on him, you can hear her say yes. And he says, the guy that has the title, that's who owns the past. Now, he doesn't say that phrase, that's who owns the past. He says the guy that owns the title. Meaning that if you have the title and the provenance to Sitting Bull's pipe, it belongs to you unless someone else shows and can go to court with and can prove in court they own the title to that object. And that was the point that he was trying to make. And I think that's an indication of the value of the word title to Fenn. He takes it very seriously, and he knew in the poem when he was granting title to the treasure specifically what he was saying. On land and ownership. Now, this does not deal with the treasure, but there's an important phrase. This comes from page 138 of The Thrill of the Chase. In that, Fenn says, I buried those bells about 3 feet deep so a metal detector can't find them. Some may be on land owned by the American people, but tended by the Bureau of Land Management. To me, that's an indication of Fenn's, and I'm sure Fenn's attorneys, interpretation of the management and administration responsibilities of the Bureau of Land Management. I believe that Fenn sees those responsibilities for management those responsibilities of the Bureau of Land Management different from the management responsibilities of, say, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Forest Service, or the National Park Service. So that was an important phrase, and I want you to remember this part. Some may be on land owned by the American people, but tended by the Bureau of Land Management. In the Santa Fe, New Mexican on June 24, 2017, Fenn tells us, and this is not his quote, this is a quote from the article as written by the writer of the article. Fenn has cautioned searchers against trespassing, use that word, trespassing, not going, trespassing, on private or tribal land. If you're trespassing on private or tribal land, according to federal law, the ownership of whatever you find there is going to revert to the owner. And cemeteries saying the treasure isn't hidden there. I think the cemeteries was a courtesy. It is basically private land. It is either owned by the jurisdiction, the governmental jurisdiction, or it is owned by an owner of that cemetery. Either way, it's not going to belong to you. So, and he tells you it's not hidden there. Don't waste your time. He's smarter than that. So Fenn, this is in that article, the second article written by Margie Goldsmith. Now, Margie Goldsmith was one of the people responsible for giving Fenn national notoriety because she wrote the book that ended up in the United, what's their magazine name?
Who?
United Airlines. What do they call their magazine?
I don't know. I fly Southwest.
I fly Southwest. That's because you guys your husband worked for Southwest. So that United Airlines magazine, she wrote the first article that everybody got crazy about. Then she wrote a second one in The Blaze online magazine. And in there, they're talking about who owns it. And Fenn talks about the 600 plus million acres of land in the United States that are, and he uses this phrase, that are owned by the American people. And that's the same phrase he used back here. I buried those bells about 3 feet deep so his metal detector can't find them. Some may be on land owned by the American people, but tended to by the Bureau of Land Management. So he brings it back, and actually he said this first. And he talks about he does the division. You know, there's 600 million acres, there are 300 million people. He's entitled to 2 acres of that. That's where he can put a can of Dr. Pepper. The point is well made, though, that if it is land owned by the American people and that he's entitled to 2 acres of it, well, then certainly he can have 1 square foot of that acreage of his 2 acres in order to hide a treasure box. But that's an indication of how he feels about it, and that land owned by the American people, he believes is the land owned by the Bureau of Land Management.
Part of the area.
Whoa, wait a minute, let's go back. So I wanted to show you this one video, and I'm going to ask you to get a little closer to the screen without covering it. I wanted to show you this video from CBS Sunday morning, where this is, I took this segment out of it, and it's a discussion about ownership. What?
Well, I knew Eric Schmidt was going to provide the answer. He said the United Airlines magazine is Hemispheres.
Hemispheres, right. So I wanted you to see this video, and I want you to pay equal attention to not only what he's saying, but what he's doing, his body language and his facial expression. Now, when they shot this, the camera was slightly low. And you do that in terms of a director, you do that to give the individual that you're interviewing the respect of a higher status. So you put it low so it looks like they're higher. If you want to make them look not high status, you put the camera high. But in addition to that, if you look at Fenn's body language, his head is back. And when you do your head is back, this is the Toby head back. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. You know, that's the head back. That's the Fenn head back in there. So he's very confident of what he's saying. Although he doesn't tell us a lot, he does do it in a way that exudes the confidence of the research necessary. And listen, so listen to what he says, watch how he says it, and then listen to the last sentence that he speaks.
Part of the area includes national parks, national forest, maybe Indian land. What have you figured out if the treasure is found in those areas? Who owns it?
This is not something that I jumped into superficially. I mean, I tried to think of everything. My feeling is, if you can find a treasure chest, you can have it.
But if I find the treasure and it's in a national park, don't I have to share it with Uncle Sam?
I spent a bunch of money with a lawyer to figure out the question about who owns it, if it's found on public land, on private property, or on Indian land. And there's all kinds of answers. If it's found in a national park, according to my attorney, the person that finds it is required to take it to the park superintendent. The rules are different if you find it on private property. If you find it on Indian land, it really gets complicated.
And the person who finds it has to deal with the legal questions.
Well, if there's a legal question, yeah. What if there's not a legal question? My argument is the person that finds it is going to own it.
Person that finds it is going to own it. To me, that's an indication that he and his attorney came up with the verbiage, whether it is in the poem or perhaps even in the olive jar, to indicate that the finder of that treasure, of Forrest Fenn's treasure trove, will own it without debate. His argument is that the finder will own it. And he didn't do that, I believe, serendipitously. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you what we're going to do when we find the treasure. And that's going to be, there's not going to be any Terry Scanting. She gets 3 minutes for happy dance, and then we move on. Okay?
As if I'm the one doing the happy dance.
That's true. Good point. So our desire is to remain, and these are what we're going to do. You can choose to do them or not. We plan to remain anonymous. We're going to inform the media that the treasure has been recovered, and we're going to provide them evidence. Do you need more volume?
I'm not talking right now.
Oh, okay. We're going to inform the media that the treasure has been recovered. We're going to provide them evidence that it was recovered within a day or so of the evidence or the informational. We're going to adhere to rule number 1 of treasure finding. Not treasure hunting, treasure finding. We will never, ever say where we found the treasure. If someone asks, our answer will be, the treasure was found where Fenn hid it. Now, that can probably raise a lot of consternation, but that's the way we plan to protect ourselves. Now, we have a show, or a video rather, that was done, I don't know, several months ago called What We'll Do When We Find the Treasure. You can get the full plan there, and if you want to ask questions about that someday, we may have a conversation about it, okay? So, take it, Shelley.
So that's our presentation for today. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, because we have some people who like to show up and just to give us thumbs down. So we want to counteract that with twice and maybe 10 times as many thumbs ups. Yeah. So give us a thumbs up, and we appreciate that. Subscribe to our channel to receive notifications of live stream activity. Again, all you have to do is hit the subscribe button, click the bell. Check out our blog at gypsieskiss.com. We have lots of great articles and photos and links and all kinds of great information there. Follow us on Instagram at _gypsies_kiss. And we're growing. We're over 100 followers now, so thank you for that. Wow. And we will continue to post photos, updates, and all kinds of great information on Instagram as well. So follow us there. And of course, gypsieskiss.tv is our YouTube channel, and gypsieskiss.live is for just tuning into the live stream once we are live.
All right. Twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And
we have PayPal.me.
Well, let me do the sales pitch. I'll do this
one.
So if you feel like you want to contribute to our efforts, which is a very nice thing to do, you can go to paypal.me/agypsieskiss and make whatever donation you feel like you make. We put it to good use. If we don't use it for traveling, in the case of Shelley's recent campaign, we used it to get her some adult education and some books so that she could continue her growth and learning. So paypal.me, a Gypsy's Kiss. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that there is a new Facebook page called Forrest Fenn's Treasures Galore, new on Facebook. They have something like over 300 likes and followers. It's a closed group, so you have to ask to join. I joined it about a week ago and found it, interesting. The conversations are a little bit different from the conversations you find on the forums. And because it's the Facebook model, if you're a Facebook user, you should probably take advantage and go visit them and join the group. Forrest Fenn's Treasures Galore. I think you'll like it. So, and if you stay with us till the end of the program, I have a Valentine's Day present for you.
Oh, very nice.
Is that nice?
Yes.
Yeah, give everybody
And Bill
a
Cross has a Valentine's present for us. He gave us $5 for a super chat. Thank you, Bill from Texas.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Let me get you over to the screen here. So when I come back, remind me about the Valentine's Day gift for these guys. Let's put up the screen. You want to scroll down and...
I did.
Hey, Joel. Man in the
Joel
Barn,
Lewicki,
Jimmy Fast.
Nikolai
Wow.
Strove, Paul
That's right.
McGinty, Man in the Barn, James Cruz, An Average Person, Peter Longen, Jimmy Fast, Eric Schmidt, Edward Owen, Rick Plank, Journeyman, Nikolai Strove. Okay. And we're getting some happy Valentine's Days, a day early. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Just highs and hellos.
Oh, look, this looks like your... that logo looks like your... the martini glass from Euro.
Oh. All right. JL. Exarban, which is Nebraska backwards, because he's from Nebraska.
Omaha.
Nebraska, or she. Clay Spence from Texas. And Joey Perro remarks that all my contributors to my PayPal fund for my course were all men, and of course.
So did Joey, did you get your package yet? Just let us know. I want to make sure you got it. It is, I think it went out by UPS the day after we, after you bought it.
Right, Friday. Let's see.
No. Nikolai, the bottle was empty. We don't actually. Apparently, you can't. UPS will not ship alcohol. At least the UPS store that I went to, I had to prove to them that it was an empty bottle. So, but we autographed it. Of course, it had my daughter's autograph, and Shelley and I autographed it for you. So, hope you enjoy it.
All right.
Cindy says the volume is low today. Did we already correct that?
We did.
Southern Indiana from Crow. Volume is good for cementification. Volume is low on Shelley only. I fixed that. West Virginia. I love West Virginia. I used to go to a VA hospital in Martinsburg, West Virginia.
And Roadrunners. T.I.
So,
Mattis. Redneck Express.
Oh,
We got
£5
another
from
$5
who?
from Adam Body.
Of course,
well,
thank
£5.
you, Adam. We knew it was five when it was £5.
It's always got an L in front of his.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam.
So we got a question here. Dan Kirk, AGK, if you find the treasure, will it be difficult to do this show and pretend like it wasn't you who found it? No, Shelley's a really good actor. And if we found it, we have a responsibility to the community to announce that it has been found. We don't have a responsibility to say that it was us that found it. And you'll probably see this really sorrowful show where we talk about the treasure's been found and give us a couple of weeks while we figure out a new subject to cover, a new treasure to cover.
Right.
So we've got it all figured out. So
Keep going up.
Bill Gorman, audio was fine, loud and clear. Shelley, your mic is still. Oh, that was redneck. Go down. I thought Bill had a question.
Oh, I don't think so.
Roadrunner. Where did I see him?
Somebody-
Audio was fine. Now sounds like Toby is in a barrel. You know what, Bill? There's something about this side that adds like that barrel sound to it. I don't like it. I hear it afterwards, and I can't hear it when I'm doing it. So. Toby is loud and clear. Shelley is still mic low. It is that's a while back, right?
Yeah.
Bill.
Kearney, or is it Carney? How do you say that? Kearney or Carney? Because some people say both ways.
Kearney, Nebraska.
Yeah.
They have new mics this year. We had them last week, Eric, so we're still trying to get them worked out. We just got tired of having those big mics in front of us. Although, honestly, we may have to go back to them because they're just better sounding.
We just kept having issues.
37, title to the gold, not the bracelet of the bronze chest. Well, the gold, when it gets, when there is legal Denise, when as you interpret that, it's going to be title to everything that's in the box, even though he uses the word gold. Gold can be interpreted by the law to mean any of the valuables that are defined as gold, silver, other precious metals, paper stuff that represents gold or silver, and other coins and other found objects. So that has already been covered in case law. Let's see. Okay, so Joel's put up an article reference. That is likely the one that I referred to, the one that was written by Klebeck. Go ahead and scroll up. Let's see if we got any questions. Bill, are you preparing? Steve, is the question of whether or not federal Park Service land is that there is case law indicating that, and he even recommends to you go report it to the superintendent. But the minute you report it to the superintendent, you may as well go hire an attorney at that point, because it's going to be a battle from that point forward. So I don't see any questions.
Okay.
John Gold, hi, welcome. Steve Gaghagen.
What was, I don't know what Denise Bagley was referring to, and that was,
I think that was the question about the gold. If you give you title to the gold, what about the other things?
Really? Because I didn't get this.
Oh, that was or is, I think that was a mistake. I hope I don't know.
I didn't know if that was something you had said that they were trying to remark on.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go back up. Go ahead, scroll down again. I don't see any. Oh, reminder, if you have a question for us and you're not using the super chat, B. Cross, thank you, Bill Cross. Make sure you precede your question with the 3 letters AGK, so I know that it's a question for us. Amy's late. Hi, Amy. How was your trip to the Denver Museum? Clay Spence, I can't get the live stream.
I think he already left.
Done and done. Thanks. We'll have to see it later. Call services.
Cell service.
Oh, cell service. That might be it. If you ever have trouble finding the stream, go to gypsykiss.live, and if you don't see it right away, just keep refreshing that page. As we come up, it'll come up. Sometimes you'll go to that page, and if we haven't started, you may not see it. Generally speaking, it works pretty good. But if not, if you get to 102 and you still haven't seen us, refresh the page. AGK, Steve Gaghagen. AGK, you did a video a while ago with a Great Fenn timeline. Can you reference me to what the title of that video is? If you go to our videos page and you do a search on quote Fenn timeline, Fenn treasure timeline, unquote, you'll be able to find that video. Let's see.
Okay. Carney.
Oh, like your name? Mm-hmm. Man in the Barn, AGK, when you auction off the chest, will you be selling publishing rights to the autobiography and the story, or will you be keeping that? Our anonymity, our desire to maintain our anonymity, includes making the sale anonymously through an auction house, which is perfectly plausible. You have to prove that you have title to it, but they're very happy, as you'll see in a lot of the major auction houses, they will make anonymous sales for you, and we have no desire after the sale through the auction house to have any kind of notoriety. One of our objectives for all of this is to remain anonymous, to pay, sell the treasure, pay the taxes, and go on with whatever remains of our lives.
I went too far, so I went back to where I was.
Okay, cool.
So I think, is the Shelley campaign still on? Actually, I made enough to pay for my certification course, but of course you're always welcome to donate to our PayPal account. We always have expenses that are associated with putting together our YouTube channel, including equipment such as microphones and software that helps us to get the word out about our videos. So we're always taking contributions to our PayPal account.
And thank you for that. We do appreciate it. Dale Richards, AGK, so do you think that go in peace means to not be confrontational at all if approached by law enforcement or government employee? So that's very, it's hypothetical because it assumes that that somehow or the other you're going to attract attention. You have to remember that Forrest didn't attract attention when he hid the treasure. Even after making 2 trips, nobody came up to him and asked what you're doing. And if you've ever been on any of these lands, Federal Park Service lands, Federal Forest Service lands tend to be more managed, if you will, than do BLM. BLM, they pretty much leave you to your own devices. Drones, I can fly drones there. I can't fly them in federal parkland. I imagine if Fenn was able to do what he described he did, I imagine if he had been there more than one time and recognized his special place to be isolated enough so that he could do what he did, it is likely isolated enough for you to find it, assuming you don't take out your pistol and start shooting it up into the air with happiness. You know? Yay! AGK, what if you go public with the treasure? What happens then? What happens then is you're going to gain a great deal of notoriety. You're going to want to be interviewed by the media. You're going to be invited to shows, to be on TV, starting locally and then go nationally. You will probably appear on Good Morning America, is it? Or
the Today Show.
The Today Show, because that's where Fenn appeared, and I'm sure they have an interest. So there'll be a lot of national visibility. Then you'll get an offer to write a book, probably, or have a book written for you. So you're going to become a national celebrity with a big treasure chest, and you're going to require some protection because in our opinion, there are at least tens of thousands and perhaps even hundreds of thousands of people who are looking for that treasure, who may believe, some of whom, not everyone, some of whom may believe they're entitled to a piece of that. And you may have to defend yourself either in writing or in the courts from that kind of activity. But there's additional money to be made. One of the reasons we want to put it up at auction is because we're going to assume that the person who buys it at auction will have the money necessary, Russian oligarch to oil prince, Saudi Arabian oil prince, who will then decide that they can afford to donate it to a museum and put it in display. We can't afford to do that. We have to cash out, if you will.
Yeah, and you have to consider all the things that Fenn has been through as the hider of the treasure: death threats, being followed, people trying to dig up his property, and all of that will happen to you once you have the treasure.
I wonder if there's any mosquitoes close. You have a thing for mosquitoes, Amy? It's going to be, Amy, it's the outdoors. There's going to be mosquitoes, spiders, bugs, mammals,
Well, some
big and
places have
small.
way more mosquitoes than others, as we know.
True. Yeah. Let's see. Watching in Minnesota. Hi from Minnesota. Hi, Minnesota. Just played for said that you need to report it. Was that national park or just missed where he said you'd have to report it, even though it is still belongs to the finder? So
That's if it's lost, right?
Right. That's a lost object. He wasn't referring to an object that would have been lost. He was referring to his trove. Thank you, Jan. Happy Valentine's. No question? You have a question, if you want to ask it, Jan, make sure we'll get it answered. Scroll down for me, please. Thank you, Adam. AGK. Jace Winters, AGK. So just to be clear, is there any land out there legal to find the treasure chest without having any complications? Well, it depends. And it depends on is whether or not you announce where you found it. Because I believe that where you found it, you could have complications from the owner of that land, whether it's a private property owner, a tribal plan, and then I'm not saying that's where it is, or the federal government, or the state and federal governments. I don't think the states are evolved on these matters as are the federal government, but by the way common law works is that if you find it in a state park, the Sinks Canyon State Park, the state of Wyoming, and you announce where you found it, the state of Wyoming is going to make a claim. And you're going to have to go to court, and it's going to cost you money to go to court. So the only way that you can avoid any of that happening is never to say where you found it. There is nothing in the law that says you have to tell people where you found it. AGK, when you auction off the chest, would you be selling publishing rights? Oh, we answered that question.
Oh.
Scroll up for me. Adam Foddy. AGK, has there been any case of treasure being found with the finder losing out due to legal issues? Adam, I'm going to refer you to the white paper that I mentioned to earlier because there is case law referenced in there that does, in England, Scotland, and the US. So the answer to your question is yes. I don't have the citations with me, but in that paper that I referred to earlier, there are citations, case law citations in there. Let's see. AGK, Jan Kerb. Fenn seems so sure of no legality issues that do you think the chest contains a title document to the treasure that passes it to the finder? I'm not 100% confident that it does, but I believe there's a reasonable probability that he does have something in the olive jar that would indicate that the finder of the treasure is that the title is transferred to the finder of the treasure. Although he said it in the poem, and in a court of law, the fact that he said it describes the treasure in detail, shows pictures of the treasure, and gives a map effectively to the treasure, and you found it at that location, then it's not going to be, it's going to be arguable only if where the treasure was located is property owned by someone who has a vested interest, and the federal government will always take a vested interest. Might try moving the lapel mic higher up. Ooh, you know, James, I'm afraid to do that because I'm watching my monitor here and I'm just on the edge of, let's see.
Oh.
Okay.
It popped, sorry.
No, you were good.
Okay, there.
Right here? Or do I have here?
There.
Mike, AGK, we all know what clue number 1 is, but interested in clue number 9 for you. Which line, sentence? We believe that the line that begins with, if you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to seek, is the last clue. Cease, I'm sorry. They don't let me in. Bill, well, they would let you in those Facebook groups if you were nicer to them.
Dale Richards, we missed a question.
Dale Richard, I had a question above. Did we miss it?
I guess so.
Let's see.
So let me know if you see it.
You're going, I can't. Oh, there it is. AGK, so do you think that go in peace means not to be confrontational? I thought I answered that. Is there another one?
I don't know.
Keep going. Maybe he wrote that after.
Oh. Well.
So because you guys are ahead of us.
Where are we?
So AGK, has there been any? Okay, we answered that. Right. Miter Brawler. AGK.
We did that one.
Okay. Bill Gorman. Bill, be nice to the Facebook groups and they'll let you in.
Dale Richards, we don't know which question you had. If you still have the same question, just write it again.
Yeah, just write it again. Dale. AGK, should the finder document the location for legal reasons? I would document the location not only in photographs, I would document it in terms of your GPS coordinates, but I wouldn't share those.
Melinda has a question.
Where?
Melinda
Trishelli?
I think so.
How often do you go out and search? How many of you have you done so far? I've been on 27. I go out I don't know, 4 to 5 times a year. Shelley's been on 5 now. She started with me last, is that right? 5? So we do, over the season, we'll do 4 to 5 maximum. I think the most I've ever done in one season is 6 searches. So I'm not up to Dale Neitzel, Cynthia Meacham's. That's, you know, Dale has over 100, or Dale has 65, Cynthia has over 100, and I think the all-time record holder was Stephanie 30acre over at Chase Chat. She's done like 150. Let's see. Bill, you don't tell that to the Denver Museum. They put a lot of work into it. Dale Richards, some BLM areas have 5-gallon bucket rule. Would moving the, that's an interesting point. You could, those buckets would be big enough to hold the treasure and the chest. So yeah, maybe the 5-gallon bucket rule would work. Let's see, that's interesting. AGK, do you think there are mosquitoes? Why does Amy? I thought she was just being cute. Do I think there are mosquitoes where the treasure is hidden? Yes. And other flying bugs, by the way.
Because it's probably near water, because he says water twice in the poem.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'd say yes, there are mosquitoes.
Although it's very dry in New Mexico, and we don't really have a mosquito issue.
Yeah.
We do sometimes have those black flies when we were at the river that time. But
there's always going to be flying bugs around.
Yeah, just use some of that spray. Would you open the chest or auction it sealed?
Yeah, our plan is to, so the question is, would you open the chest or auction it sealed? Our plan is to leave the chest intact and including not even opening the olive jar. It'll be completely...
But we're taking pictures of everything.
We are going to take pictures of everything. We are going to photograph everything to document it. And we are going to photograph the chest in situ. So we answered that. AGK, are you aware of any interview with Forrest conducted this year with author James, it's pronounced Fry? I don't know. So first of all, you have to watch the entire video. When I saw that...
You're being cryptic. You want to explain what that's about? In case
right.
people don't know what you're talking about.
So Mike Cowlings, who's kind of a friend of ours, I call him a friend, has a YouTube channel called Cow Lazars. And his most recent YouTube video, he starts by talking about a telephone call that was scheduled for him by James, and he keeps using the word Frey. If you knew he was talking about, you know, the gentleman's name is Fry. James Fry is notorious in a way because back in 2003 he wrote a book called A Million Tiny Pieces, and the book became well regarded, especially by one individual who happened to be named Oprah, and she promoted the book. And then Oprah later found out through the media that the book was a bit of a hoax, that not everything in the book that has been presented as a autobiography was not true. And Oprah brought he and his publisher back on her show, and she basically beat the heck out of him over lying to her like this. And I don't know necessarily that she ever forgave him for it. He hasn't been on since. His name is James Fry. I hadn't heard, honestly. I don't have an interest in the type of books he writes. I think he writes kind of what do they call them? Fantasy adventure books. So he's not on my top 10 author list. So I hadn't thought about him. What Mike did recently is he announced on his vlog that he had a telephone conversation with James Frey. He keeps referring to him as Frey. And that Frey had told Mike that he had spent 2 days speaking with Forrest Fenn. And that Fenn had provided him information that when I heard Mike say it, I thought to myself, well, that's completely contradictory from anything that Forrest has said, either to me or in public. And about halfway through the vlog, Mike basically says, "Oh, just kidding." I mean, he did it in a very polite way, and apparently this did take place, and he was fooled by it, kind of. And I think he wanted to share that he was fooled by it, and it wasn't until later he realized it was kind of a hoax. So about that time, I got an email message from someone claiming to be Fry's assistant and asking for an interview. I contacted Forrest and told him what the situation was, and asked him to either confirm or deny it. Forrest wrote back very quickly and basically said, "I've never heard of the person." So there was no interview of Forrest Fenn by James Fry or James Frey, and Mike admitted that he realized it was a hoax. So, but like everything else, because some of the stuff, if you listen, I'm going to recommend that you go listen to the video, because about halfway through, you're going to say to yourself, "Holy, Forrest Fenn, James Fry and Forrest Fenn just changed the treasure hunt because of the things that this person who claimed to be James Fry had been told by Forrest." So there's that. AGK, when or did Fenn say that the chest could be affected by natural disasters? Wow, Peter, I don't have that at my disposal right on hand, and I certainly don't have it in my 69-year-old memory. But if you go to terryscant.com and enter similar search criteria, they should be able to find it for you. Let's see.
It keeps popping.
Oh.
There. Yeah.
Craig Child's House of Rain. Oh, is that the one where he says you can? Is that the one where he talks about that you can die two ways in the desert? You can die thirsty, or you can die drowning, something like that. It looks interesting. When I was doing the research last night, I looked at the things that he had written, and they looked damned interesting. AGK, what? Roadrunners. Off topic somewhat, but can you tell me whether or not there are lignite deposits in or adjacent to Cimarron Canyon? Yes, there are, Roadrunner. Will we see you there this spring? AGK, did Forrest say once that the blaze cannot be seen on Google Earth? I believe he did say that, but again, I think it's relatively recently. I think we covered it just a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
We talked what?
Whether Forrest said the blaze cannot be seen from Google Earth. Did he actually say that?
He said you can't figure out the whole thing from Google.
I think somebody asked him a question and he responded to it. I think in Mysterious Writings he may have answered that. Again, I don't know, but if you go to terryscant.com.
You were looking up stuff on the blaze last week. You didn't see that.
That's why I think I did, but it wasn't part of where we were going with the program.
Okay.
AGK, do you have to report the $100,000 in cash that's sitting in the chest? Assuming that there is $100,000 in cash, you have to report to the federal and state tax authorities the estimated value of the treasure so that you can pay tax on it. The $100,000 could be considered part of the trove if it's actually there. I think there's indications that Fenn said he decided not to do that. But if it's there, it's just added to the total value of the chest on which you will have to pay taxes.
David Dow.
David Dow. AGK, could you create an entity owned by a self-directed Roth IRA? Therefore, when you find it, you don't really own it, but the Roth IRA owns it, then no need. Wow, you're asking a financial question that I am just not qualified to respond to. I don't know enough about Roth IRAs. I have a financial manager, a whole company that has taken my money as long as I can remember, and now they're providing it back to me at a reasonable return. But I don't know how they do it, and I don't ask as long as that check comes in once a month. David Klein, if I ever found the treasure, I would split it with you guys for sure. Your dedication to this project is profound. Well, that's a very nice, kind thing to say, David. We appreciate that. And we would then go into hiding again.
Thank you.
AGK, could you create an... Oh, okay. AGK, Can we exclude New Mexico-owned public land and city-owned public land? So it depends what you mean by public. I think you can. I think you can exclude
State and city.
State and city land. I don't think you can exclude them because their authority, the law covering management of state and city land, is different from federal. I think you would probably have an argument on your hands if you did. I wouldn't imagine it being in any incorporated city because the reason cities incorporate is so that there is no public land. They incorporate so that they can be their living is made on land taxes. So they incorporate to ensure that the land that they incorporate into their city proper is owned by someone so that they can tax them. I'd be surprised if you found it on quote city land because most city land, 98% of city land is not owned by the city. Let's see. James Fry said my photos were amazing. Bill, well, we know that's Amy Smith. AGK, do you know if Forrest Fenn's father really took his own life and the details to finding his body? He did take his own life. He died in his bed, and he's buried in the cemetery in Temple, Texas. So you don't want to be looking for his body.
No.
Let's see. Man in the Barn, AGK, if someone else finds the trove and you found out the location afterwards, would you announce or report it? Only if they announced it publicly. Because if they announced it publicly, they would put it basically in the public domain and we would announce it. If they, on the other hand, sent us an email and did the same thing that we plan to do and say, would you please announce that the treasure has been found, and they didn't give us the location, we would not ask for the location. Could you avoid legal issues by lending or just donating it to a museum for an extended permanent time frame? That assumes that where the owner of the property, or the manager, the administrator of the property owner doesn't create a legal a case against you. So here's, if you announce where you found it, and that it was found on land that is owned by anyone, you're going to make a legal case for yourself. Now, in the end, like Fenn says, go report it to the superintendent. The superintendent will thank you and take a picture with you and then let you go with the treasure. That's not going to happen. It's going to be fought. So anytime you announce where the treasure is found, and if there's someone that is responsible for either ownership of that land or administration of that land, they're going to fight you. And you're not going to be able to put it, you're not going to be able to make an argument that, well, if you let me take it, I'll put it in a museum. That's not going to happen. They're going to want to own it. 5-gallon bucket. Yeah, that's true, Michael. 5-gallon bucket rule is for, it doesn't cover everything. It just covers petrified wood. Let's see. AGK, we should have a secret party with all invited in the hunt.
All invested.
Invest in the hunt. Denise, 2 people can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
It's called Fenbury.
Yeah. ATK, Dale must have been at our last one thing. A Gypsy's Kiss. Do you think Forrest or an affiliate of his has staked a claim where he hid the treasure? If so, entirely different set of rules. The likelihood Forrest has kept a secret. He hasn't told anyone where he hid the treasure. So the likelihood of them having staked a claim is I don't think a consideration. Plus a claim is stake for material that is subsurface, not hidden, not things there. So they would have to defend it if they ended up, a staked claim doesn't cover treasure troves. It covers gold that was found as a result of prospecting or mining. County federal property because all you find is a Bear Canyon. Okay. AGK, Steve Geghagen. What are the 6 questions you've decided on? We haven't decided upon them. One of the reasons Shelley and I see each other twice a week, and so we're going to sit down this afternoon, pick the 6 questions, and Shelley's going to send them to Forrest to see if we get them answered, and we may or may not. I know you guys for some reason have concluded that Forrest is my best friend. Forrest doesn't like me. I mean, that's probably a little bit too strong. Forrest, I am not in the same category of as a friend as is, say, Dale Neitzel or what's her name, Cynthia. I'm mercenary Toby.
It's an outlier.
Yeah, I'm an outlier. And when he needs help with something, I'll hear from him. Live streaming up one of his things. But other than that, we don't talk much. And I mean, it's not like we're exchanging emails. I sent him this email regarding the Fry thing, and he responded to it. And usually it's a very short response. We don't have any love letter relationship, Fenn and I.
Nor do I with him either.
So we're going to send him the questions. There is no guarantee that he's going to. Well, the point that I was trying to make is we'll send him the questions. I'm actually going to have Shelley send them because he does like Shelley on her emails to see if we can get answers. And if we do, we'll know by next week whether we do or not. Maybe we'll make a show about that if something happens. Let's see. Eric, he said you couldn't zoom in enough to see the chest. I don't think he said whether or not you could see the blaze. Okay. Thank you, Eric. ATK, I think he buried it in sand. He made mention of that referring to a poem in his book. Do you think that digging in the sand does not create a surface disturbance? I'm not sure that we agree that he buried it in the sand. Where if you look at the mountains north of Santa Fe or the Rocky Mountains, there's not a lot of sandy areas there. They're hard-packed, high mountain range stuff. Sand tends to be bottom land, low land, low desert. We don't think it's in sand. AGK found a state ROW. I don't know what, Bill, I'm not sure what you're telling me. ATK only the Thursdays. Thank you, Joey. That's the point we'd like to make. It's not a Gypsy's Kiss until Thursdays. That's when we're drinking.
Today it's iced tea.
Today is iced tea.
Yeah.
AGK and all. The key word may be the trove, and the fact that he says, leave my trove for all to seek. This line in the poem may cover legalities of ownership. He spent a whole bunch of dollars on lawyers. Yeah, we agree with that, Sean and him.
That's it.
Yay. You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, guys. Thanks for joining us today. So let's see.
And again, thank you, Eric Schmidt, for providing answers to whenever we forget something or can't remember or need a link. That's always appreciated. It's always appreciated when you guys tell us how our sound is or how our lighting, if anything needs to be fixed. We appreciate that as well. And our moderators, Man in the Barn and Joel DeWicki today, and Jimmy Fast, we had all three. So that was very nice. We appreciate your work on our behalf. And we already said
Thumbs up, subscribe. Okay.
Thumbs up, subscribe.
PayPal. Go to the new Facebook. Forrest Fenn's
and our Facebook.
You know what? We did return our Facebook, but we're doing it just as an outbound thing. We're not looking. We didn't set it up for conversations. We just had some requests, like people who don't do blogs or people who don't do YouTube. They wanted to have access, so we opened up our Facebook page at Gypsy's Kiss, the Hunt for Forrest Fenn's Treasure. That's open again, but it's all outbound. There's no conversations going on there.
It's just a place for us to post things.
Post things.
If you want to have a conversation with us,
join us here.
Post on our videos, come to our live chat, or you can always email us at gypsieskiss@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. So I told you I'd have a Valentine's Day present for you. In my presentation today, I mentioned 2 articles, 2 scholarly papers, one by John Kleberg and the other by the Congressional Research Service. When I post this video along with the chat onto a Gypsy's Kiss, I will put links to those 2 papers, to those 2 scholarly papers that I referenced in here, so that you can download them. Okay, they'll be there on gypsieskiss.com when I post this video on there. Now it takes a couple of hours for YouTube to process this, so it won't be up there until then, and it'll have the chat, and it'll also have links to those 2 papers so that you can spend some quality time reading them too.
Yes.
And then prepare more questions.
And we will be back on Thursday with Book Club. We'll be going over chapter 1.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Chapter
2, which isn't numbered, but it's called First Grade. It's
a 2-page, it's very short.
Two pages
it's
of text and then a 2-page photograph.
But it has some really cool stuff in it, so we like it a lot. So we'll spend time on that Thursday, and then Friday, Shelley's new Just the Facts video will be out. So what comes to the questions, we're going to decide today. We're going to download them and then go through them and pick the ones that we think, A, meet the criteria that we set out, and B, we'll be likely to get an answer from Fenn. And Bill, no, you can't ask where the treasure is. Okay, so lower third is down.
Thank you so much for showing up and talking with us today, and all of your support, and we appreciate you being here. For those people who gave to Super Chat, thank you so much. I don't remember everybody's name. I remember Bill Cross, and I remember Adam Foddy, and there were a few others, and we appreciate that. David Klein, and I think there was one more, but we did mention it earlier. So thank you so much for watching and for joining in with us, and we'll see you again on Thursday for book club. For Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Younis. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Thursday.
Bye-bye.